everybody. Welcome to BSB Preview. My name is Sandy Lowe. I'm the senior editor here at BSB. This is BSB Preview, where we are previewing our September 2020 releases, which are available for pre-order now. So I have some amazing authors with us. We have Ronnie Black, we have CJ Birch, we have Fiona Riley, Sam Ledel, and Anne Laughlin.
Okay, hi, I'm CJ Birch. I am an author with Cold Strokes. This is my fifth book I'm reading from, Just One Taste. So it's about frustrated with small town life. Haley moves to the city only to get fired and lose her apartment all in the same day. Desperate, she takes a job as a short order cook in a quaint diner. Now she just has to find a place to live and learn how to cook. So what I'm reading from is she started living in the diner secretly, and her boss has found her and let her stay at her place for the night, and this is the morning after. So Haley opened her eyes to find two yellow greenish slits staring at her from across her pillow and a furry paw resting on her lip. The sun cut a sharp line across its fur. Shocked, Haley didn't move. Lauren had mentioned she had a cat the night before, but said cat had streaked for Lauren's bedroom the moment Haley had appeared. She blinked a few times and the cat refused to budge. Haley inched backward. The paw stayed on her lip and almost in slow motion, the claws extended. She ducked, but not fast enough to stop her lip from getting caught. The sharp claw ripped through her bottom one. Shit, Haley scrambled off the bed and out of the room faster than she could remember ever moving. Lauren was in the kitchen making coffee and wearing a very thin, very short black robe, revealing long, muscular legs. Her dark hair was piled on top of her head, and even though she didn't wear a lot of makeup, seeing her like this made her look even more pale. Haley averted her eyes from the welcoming sight. More than ever, she had to tamp down this crush. Lauren was her boss, and apparently her new temporary roommate. I met your cat. Lauren turned to Haley, who was still in the ratty sweat she'd been wearing last night. Oh no, Lauren said as she noticed Haley's lip. That's Jerkface. She grabbed a few sheets of Kleenex and handed them to Haley. Jerkface? Haley dabbed at her lip. Then you're aware of its poor behavior and manners in general? Yes. My cat is a jerk, but I can't give him up. She shrugged as if it were obvious why. I'm sorry he attacked you. It wasn't so much an attack, but the creepiest way to wake up ever. Lauren stepped close and peered at her lip. He doesn't have rabies, if that makes you feel better. At that moment, Jerkface appeared, stalking out of the bedroom and meowing loudly. He hopped onto the counter and swished his tail at Lauren's toast. She shoved him off the counter. Go, you crazy cat. She turned to Haley. He likes to mark his territory with hair. Be forewarned, you will be covered in copious amounts of hair before you leave. Coffee? She pulled down a mug from the cupboard and handed it to Haley. She had to get on tiptoe to reach the shelf, and Haley couldn't help herself. She watched as the robe rose to reveal the back of Lauren's thighs. She inwardly groaned at the image vying for attention and physically turned to view the apartment. It was fairly large. It encompassed the footprint of the diner. She hadn't seen the size of Lauren's bedroom, but the spare was big enough for a desk, a double bed, and a corner stacked with boxes. The kitchen was small, but made up for it with a large living room and dining area next to the kitchen. Lauren took her toast to the table, and Haley joined her with a full cup of coffee. Lauren crossed her legs and picked a couple of hairs out of her toast before taking a bite. One thing's been bugging me since last night. How did you get into the diner? I had the alarm set. Haley sipped her coffee. Should she lie? She didn't see much point. It wasn't like she was some mastermind criminal. I never left. There's a place behind the stairs that's a good spot to hide. After my shift, I went to the basement, and when no one was looking, never came out. Lauren paused. How many nights have you been sleeping there? Last night would have been my second. I got locked out of my room and was kind of desperate. I wish you'd come to me. Jerkface jumped onto the table and waved his bushy tail in Haley's face. When he moved on to Lauren, she had several more hairs in her coffee. I really appreciate you letting me stay here last night. I'll try to be out of here as soon as possible. Lauren set her coffee on the table and pushed her toast away. She'd obviously given up on picking the hair out. Look, rent is expensive and finding a decent apartment is hard. Don't feel like you have to settle on something just to get out of here. This apartment has housed many people who have needed help. When I came to work at the diner, Greta helped me out by letting me stay here. I didn't have anywhere else to go, and I'd like to pass that forward. Haley swallowed what she was about to say. She usually rejected any help. She didn't like feeling obligated to anyone, and this was really huge. This wasn't someone lending her money or letting her go ahead of them in line. This was coexisting with a virtual stranger. You're gonna let me stay with you, but you don't even know me. I know enough. Haley raised a brow as she took a sip of her coffee. Like what? You love old video games. You're obsessed with the 80s. I'm not obsessed. From where I'm sitting, it looks like a bit of an obsession. Haley would have liked to argue that fact a little more, but she was actually enjoying the teasing. Where she was from, you teased only people you were fond of. And it also showed that perhaps Lauren had noticed her as much as she'd noticed Lauren. Go on, Haley said, cradling her mug between both hands. You respect people's time. You don't always think before you act. And everyone at the diner likes you. I can't think of a better recommendation than that. Haley was left speechless. She wanted to say yes because why wouldn't she? A room above where she worked with a beautiful woman? However, that was the hitch in the plan. She had a crush on that beautiful woman, and this situation could end up being torturous for her. Just say yes. I mean, where else are you going to go? Lauren sipped her coffee, holding the cup with both hands. The sight was so inviting, Haley was finding it hard to argue all the reasons why this was a bad idea. But she had only one reason to say no, and she couldn't tell Lauren that. Haley had exhausted all other options besides the park, but with November a week away, that was impossible. Not if she valued her limbs. Okay, yes. But as soon as I save up enough money, I'll look for somewhere else. Lauren smiled. Is the prospect of living with me that horrible? She grabbed her plate and mug and placed them in the sink. I don't know, what kind of roommate are you? Lauren leaned back against the counter. Let's see, the good. I'm clean, quiet. She began counting on her fingers. I always remember to put the toilet seat down. In fact, there's even a lock on it. I don't watch obnoxious TV, smoke, drink excessively, or hoard my own hair. The bad, she picked up Jerkface and cradled his pudgy, hairy form. How do you feel about cats? He sadly happens to be the most high-maintenance cat on the planet. Haley laughed. She hated cats. But the look on Lauren's face as she said it almost made up for the furball in her arms. Now you, she said as Jerkface scrambled from her arms. Me? Haley looked to the ceiling, thinking about all the complaints she'd heard over the years. Well, the good. I don't have any annoying hobbies. I don't shed and I'm quiet. And the bad? Haley shrugged. There is no bad. I've been told on multiple occasions that I'm awesome. Well, on that note, I'm not scheduled to work until this afternoon. Do you need any help moving your stuff over? Do you have a lot of stuff? Lauren looked around her apartment. Well, not tiny. It wouldn't accommodate too much more. Again, Haley was first inclined to say no, but it would probably take 2 trips without the help, so she had to weigh her default reaction against her better judgment. I'm going to infer by that pause you're saying, yes, Lauren, please help me. Haley scrunched her face up. Thanks. And that's it.
Good. Thank you. So I have a question.
Sure.
Does the lock on the toilet seat have something to do with the cat?
Yes.
Okay. I was trying to find the whole reading. I'm like, why is there a lock on the toilet seat? All right. Thank you. That was a pressing concern of mine. All right. Next up, we have the wonderful Ronica Black, who is making, I believe, her debut Zoom appearance.
Yes, I finally made it this time.
So please give some virtual applause to Ronnie and tell us what you're reading from.
Well, I'm reading from my newest release, Passion's Sweet Surrender. You guys see that? It is a contemporary romance, and it's set in a fictional town in Mexico called Puerto Tranquilo. And in the opening scene of the book, fiction writer Cam Santiago is in town to see her friend Tomas about some work she has for him. But when she finds Tomas, an incredibly beautiful woman is arguing with him. And it isn't long before Cam realizes, as she's unwillingly brought into the conversation, that this woman's attitude overshadows her beauty. And also what Cam doesn't know is that this rude woman is about to become her neighbor. Cam continued toward the pier where she found the man she was looking for, her friend Tomas. Tomas, however, was busy. He was in his brother's fishing hut surrounded by large coolers containing their daily catch. He was talking with a woman, most likely a customer, but strangely he didn't appear to be his usual jovial self. Cam had no interest in the woman's transaction with Tomas and stared off into the turquoise sea, concentrating on the warm breeze as it ran its fingers through her short hair. Excuse me, the woman next to her said. Do you know anything about the shrimp for sale around here? Cam turned to look at her, surprised and a little disappointed at being pulled away from her tranquil state. No, not. Cam's words fell, toppling into the sea as she properly took in the woman for the first time. Cam stood motionless, mouth hanging open. She was awestruck, completely awestruck by the woman's beauty. And then came the shock at being so awestruck. It had been years since she'd been so strongly affected at the sight of a woman. I was hoping you could help, the woman continued, obviously clueless to Cam's overwhelming sense of shock and awe. I think there may be a language barrier. Her pink lips parted as if she were intending to speak again, as if she were waiting to respond to whatever Cam was going to say. But Cam couldn't say anything. She was too busy thinking how very much her lips looked like a bow, an archer's bow turned on its side. The bow-shaped lips closed, bringing Cam back to reality. Never mind. The woman turned back to Tomas. Her frown was evident, even from the side, but it did nothing to detract from the perfection of her profile. Maybe we should try again, the woman said to Tomas. I don't want the blue shrimp, I want the brown. No brown, miss, no mas. But I need the brown. She rubbed her forehead. I have to have the brown. Yo necesito. And she trailed off, and Cam could sense her struggling to find the correct words in Spanish. Cam intervened, growing frustrated herself. She spoke to Tomas in Spanish, and he explained that he had already sold all the brown shrimp he had had for the day. He only had the blue, and the lady didn't seem willing to accept that. Cam directed her attention back to the woman. He doesn't have any more brown, Cam said. He sold out for the day. She made a small noise of disbelief. I don't see how that's possible. With all these fishermen, all these boats, you're telling me they're all sold out? Tomas is yes. And as for the others, well, I've already been to 2 others. She sighed and rubbed her forehead again. I'm tired. I don't want to have to track down every fisherman here for some freaking shrimp. I don't understand how they could be out. Well, it's late in the day, Cam said, and weekends here are crazy busy, especially now with the beginning of shrimp season. Lo siento, miss, Tomas said, apologizing. He held out the icy bag of blue shrimp. He told her she could have it for free. He said he's sorry and he'd like for you to have the blue for free. She shook her head and laughed. I can't take the blue. That's what I've been trying to tell him, but he doesn't seem to get it. Cam felt herself frown as the woman's incredible beauty began to fade and give way to her attitude. He speaks English, Cam said, eager to defend her longtime friend, and he has the ability to think and reason, so he understands what you want, I can assure you of that, but what he doesn't understand is your refusal to accept that you aren't going to get it. She reared back a little and her mouth opened again. Cam could tell she had struck a nerve, so she quickly spoke. Have you had the blue shrimp before? No, I have not. My friend, the one who wants the shrimp, may have, I don't know. Well, the blue shrimp is just as good. In fact, a lot of people like it better. It's kind of what we're known for around here. Your friend might like it too. I'm sure she can adjust whatever it is she's making to accommodate for the difference in taste. And Tomas, who was one heck of a great guy, by the way, is offering it to you for free. So what do you have to lose in accepting it? You don't like it? Come back earlier tomorrow for the brown. She scratched her head and sighed. Yes, okay. I guess I don't have much of a choice, do I? She dug in her pocket and pulled out some folded bills. She thumbed through them and held out some for Tomas. It was a generous amount. For your time, she said, the venom finally gone from her voice. She thanked him, gave Cam a quiet, unreadable look, and wished them both a nice day before she turned and walked away. The breeze came off the sea, toying with the woman's hair like a child trying to cheer up a sad friend. Cam's gaze fell to the pebbled ground, where the breeze was also playing with something else. Oh no, she quickly knelt and snatched the fallen $20 bill and hurried after the woman. Wait, miss, wait, please. The woman turned with alarm, but as soon as she seemed to recognize Cam, that alarm hardened to what looked like contempt. I'm not a jerk, she spat as Cam slammed to a stop. What? Cam almost looked over her shoulder, convinced she was speaking to someone other than her. Your friend, she continued. Tomas, I knew what he was saying. I understood. I just wasn't sure he understood me. Granted, I've had a very long, very shitty day, and I know I'm frustrated and probably more than a bit cranky, but I'm not an asshole, and I don't appreciate you assuming that I am. Got it? She lifted her sunglasses above her eyes and pierced Cam with a gaze that felt as hot as the sun. Yeah, Cam said, stunned breathless, this time from her eyes. Cam held out the 20. You drop this. The woman stared, seemingly confused. Oh. She took the money and shoved it in her pocket. Thanks. No problem. She started to turn, but halted halfway. You shouldn't assume things about people you know, especially when you don't know what they've been through that day. She had thrown one last dagger, and this one had hit its mark, and Cam did not like the way it felt as it sliced into her skin. Really? That's how you're going to walk away? After making sure you got in one last jab? I could say a lot of things to you right now, but I'm choosing not to. So I'm just going to kindly suggest that you follow your own so-called advice. So maybe instead of thinking about yourself, think about Tomas and consider all that he may have gone through today before he encountered you. Because I can guarantee you, whatever it is you went through in one damn day is nothing compared to what he goes through each and every day. She stopped and shook her head. What am I doing? Why am I wasting my time? The woman dug in her pocket again and retrieved the $20 bill. She shoved it toward her. You're right. I should have considered him and his life and his feelings. Give this to him along with an apology. Cam didn't take it. Don't give him your money. Give him your respect. The woman clamped her mouth closed and crumpled up the bill in her fists. The scarlet on her cheeks deepened. You don't know me, she said. You don't. She turned on her heel and walked away. And I don't think I want to, Cam whispered as she watched her walk away, even if you are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Well, that's amazing. I think that I have a lot of things I could say right now, but I'm choosing not to. Should be a 2020 slogan or something.
Right.
That's great. Good enemies to lovers vibe happening there.
Yes.
Alrighty, next up we have Anne Laughlin. Tell us a bit about your book and your reading, and start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good to be here. And I'm reading today from my new release called Money Creek. And it's a book about a woman named Claire Lahane who has a problem with prescription pills. So she's got an addiction problem. And as the book starts out, we learn that she has gotten into trouble at work and lost her job, and she's lost her drug dealer. She's just lots of things going wrong. And what I'm going to read from, and also part of her journey, just so everyone knows, is embracing her love for women. So that doesn't happen right at the beginning. So the scene I'm going to read from is also a morning after scene. And here we go. The last time Claire woke up with a stranger, she swore it would never happen again. But here she was, opening her eyes to a room she'd never seen before. She lay on her side, naked in a four-poster bed, as a familiar gut-clenching remorse made her stomach tumble. Her breathing became shallow and rapid. She didn't dare turn to see what kind of man she'd gone home with. It was still dark out, and only the glare of the streetlight poking through the window blinds lit the room. It smelled faintly of eucalyptus, very tidy except for the pile of clothes strewn by the door. Next to the bed was an antique table and a Tiffany-style lamp, a pile of books stacked high. She skimmed the titles. What a Man Read would tell her a lot. There were the most recent releases from Margaret Atwood, Zadie Smith, and Emma Donoghue, contemporary fiction by women, authors. Maybe she'd hit the jackpot and hooked up with a well-read feminist man. She turned to her right and found, instead, a woman leaning on one elbow, gazing at her. She had clear eyes, auburn hair hanging loose around her shoulders, and a crooked smile. Her face was handsome, with chiseled cheekbones and a slightly patrician air. Claire grabbed the sheet and pulled it up to her chest. "Good morning, Claire," the woman said in a timber-rich alto. Claire stared at her with fixed eyes. Hearing her name made her feel more vulnerable. The woman had the advantage of her. Claire knew nothing, and she knew everything. She prayed she hadn't done anything mortifying. It was a good sign the woman was smiling at her. Whatever she did couldn't have been too bad. She broke her gaze and lowered her eyes. "Good morning," she said, her throat froggy from sleep and God knows what else. "You seem uncomfortable," the woman said. Claire forced herself to look at her. "I'm a little nervous. I've never been with a woman before." "So you said last night. I hope it was a good experience for you." She hoped so too. She wasn't upset at having sex with a woman, something she knew would have happened sooner or later, but she was ashamed she didn't remember meeting her or anything that came after that. Her short-term memory had been on the fritz. When she was in a blackout, she forgot everything almost as soon as it happened, which is why drunks so often repeated themselves. At least that's what she'd read in a depressing article on alcoholism. She scooched up to lean against the headboard and winced at the hammering in her head. She was beginning to feel the full strength of her hangover. "How are you feeling?" The woman now sat in a lotus position, facing her. Claire avoided her eyes. She seemed entirely out of her league. Not so bad, yourself? I'm surprisingly good given how drunk we were last night, she said, but I have no regrets. She reached over for Claire's hand and held it gently. I hope you don't. Can you regret something you can't remember? No, it was lovely. She looked on the floor for her cell phone. It was nowhere in sight. Do you happen to know what time it is? The woman turned toward her nightstand. It's 6, still time for more sleep. She ducked her head to meet Claire's eyes. Unless you were interested in doing something else? Her voice was sultry, as if she really desired her, which Claire found impossible to believe. No, I mean, I didn't realize it was so late. I've got to go. She swung her legs to the side of the bed. 6 is late? I have to get into the office. I work in a sweatshop. Why was she lying? She remembered she didn't have to go to work, that she'd quit the day before, but she was desperate to get away. She looked to where her clothes were scattered near the door. Apparently, they'd been in quite a hurry to get them off. I thought you were a lawyer. I am, and the hours are ridiculous. Claire took a breath before she slid off the bed and tried to walk in a reasonably dignified manner across the room to her clothes. She could feel the woman's eyes on her. You're beautiful. You know that, don't you? No, she didn't. Surely her outside looked as bad as her inside felt, a toxic brew of nausea, the hammering head, and a bucket full of recrimination. Her business suit laid crumpled on the floor, and she pulled it on before glancing back at the woman. She'd gotten out of bed and stood naked in front of her, as comfortable as a hand in a glove. She was at least 6 feet, a few inches taller than Claire, and 100 times more confident. Whatever actually happened, she hoped she'd given the woman pleasure. Usually her blackouts erased the memory of behavior she'd rather forget, but she would have liked remembering her first time with a woman, would like to know whether it was everything she suspected it to be. Claire had to clear her throat to talk. Sorry, I have to run. I'll let myself out. Wait, the woman came closer. Her nakedness seemed billboard-sized. You seem skittish. There's no pressure around what happened last night, 2 adults and all that. Sure, I understand. It's just I have to get going. She stared at Claire for a moment before leading her out of the bedroom to the front door. She seemed ready to move on herself. She held the door open, unconcerned at who might pass in the hallway. The name's Ellen, by the way. I know you don't remember. I do remember. Of course I do. Ellen raised one eyebrow. Are you lying to me or to yourself? She smiled and motioned Claire out the door. Take care of yourself, Claire.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm seeing a theme here. We've had 2 readings about food and one with a hangover. Believe it or not, all these drafts were written before the pandemic. I don't know. It feels like they maybe could have been written in the last few months. Who knows? All righty. Oh, I've lost my list. Hang on. Next up, we have Sam Ledel. She's going to tell us a little bit about her book and read whenever you're ready, Sam.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Ledel. I'm going to be reading from Broken Rain, which is the sequel to Daughter of No One. They are a fantasy adventure series. So in book 2, in Broken Rain, the main characters, Princess Aurelia Diremaid and Jastin Cypher, are on a journey for a cure for Jastin's sister, who is very ill. In book 1, the 2 of them met and had an instant connection and attraction. Princess Aurelia knows she likes Jastin and isn't afraid to make her feelings known. Jastin, however, is incredibly hesitant about even entertaining the possibility of their being together, despite her growing feelings. So the scene I'm going to be reading is between the 2 of them. They have set up camp for the night, and Aurelia has just woken up from a dream. In a jolt, Aurelia woke to darkness, but this darkness was warm and held figures that were fast growing familiar. She found Jastin leaning over her, her hazel eyes dark with concern. I'm sorry, Aurelia said. I was dreaming. Jastin sat back, eyes curious. Your brother? Yes. The air was heavy, and Aurelia pushed back her long hair to allow the faintest wind to reach her neck. She glanced at the gathering clouds blocking the moon. Jastin seemed to lose herself in thought before glancing back at Aurelia. What was he like? My brother was kind and generous. He loved to hunt and adored outings with my father into the wood to catch game. Sounds like we would have gotten along. You would have. Justin smiled. Maybe I could have even taught him a thing or two about hunting. Perhaps. He loved going into the market to mingle with villagers on solstice days. Aurelia laughed, recalling a memory. 3 years ago, some local fishermen talked him into an archery contest to see who could shoot an apple hanging from a branch. My idiot brother decided to make it more challenging and placed the apple on his own head for the villagers to take aim at. Justin's eyebrows arched. You're not serious. I am. Fortunately, right before the first arrow was shot, our mother caught sight of this latest folly from a nearby hill. She shouted so loudly the entire kingdom turned to watch her march down to scold him. Justin's eyes were bright. I bet she wasn't too happy. Not at all. She grabbed the apple and hurled it into the trees. She was furious. Of course, the villagers got a good laugh at Brennus's expense. He was quite the character, my brother. They both sat quietly by the fire. After a moment, Justin said, I'm sorry to have missed that. I never went to many kingdom events. Aurelia could guess why she hadn't attended. As an odium child, it would have been easier for her to hide. Unsure to broach that particular topic, Aurelia said, I wonder if the gods knew what they were doing, making sure we met when we did. Justin's snort surprised her. Seeming to realize who she was with, Justin glanced sideways. I'm sorry, but I'm not one to put much faith in the gods. They haven't done very much for me in this lifetime, or for anyone I care about. Aurelia was quiet. It wasn't the gods who had been unkind to Justin and her mother. It was the Diremaid family, Aurelia's family, who had created the laws stating that women like Justin's mother were fit for punishment due to bearing a child out of wedlock. It was an archaic rule, but a rule she'd only learned in theory until she'd met Justin. Touching Justin's knee, Aurelia said, If I had known what your family had gone through. Her voice drifted off. What could she have done? She was royalty, yes, but it was her mother and father who implemented the laws set in place by their ancestors, rules established to keep the kingdom of Venasti safe and its people in order. Seeming to sense Aurelia's uncertainty, Justin placed her hand atop Aurelia's. It's all right. It's not your fault my childhood didn't have the comforts of others. But Justin cut her off, her voice heated. The Diremaid legacy runs deep. History put my mother in the dungeon and forced us to live like dogs. She took a breath, lowering her voice. You had nothing to do with it. They held one another's gaze. Nevertheless, Aurelia replied, I am a part of it. I promise I will work to right our wrongs when all of this is done. Justin gently squeezed Aurelia's hand. Her eyes gleamed and she smiled. Aurelia once again lost herself in those eyes, wondering at the glimmer of vulnerability in them. She savored the feel of her hand in Justin's and longed for this moment to never end. Her heart beat faster and she was overtaken by an even greater longing, this one physical. She imagined herself leaning close, shrinking the distance between them. She had thought about kissing Justin since they'd survived the skirmish with Drest, each of them coming out battered and bruised, but alive. As they sat together now, Aurelia bit her lip to quell her urges. Was Justin's pulse quickening too? Before she could discover, the look in Justin's eyes changed. She cleared her throat and, to Aurelia's dismay, pulled back her hand. Your sense of duty is admirable, Princess. Aurelia's brow furrowed as Justin lay next to the fire, one hand behind her head. I appreciate your words, but it's late and we should rest for tomorrow's walk. We have a lot of ground to cover. Aurelia swallowed. Each time she felt Justin opening up, this happened. She seemed to realize what she'd said and quickly slammed the door before Aurelia could venture too far inside. If only she knew how I longed to know her. I suppose you're right, Aurelia said softly. Good night, Justin. Justin had rolled onto her side, her back to Aurelia. Her voice was filled with something Aurelia couldn't pinpoint when she whispered, Good night, Princess.
Oh, what? The tension. Read the rest of this book. For those of you who don't know, Sam's book is part of a series. Sam, what's the first book, in case people haven't read it yet?
The first one is Daughter of No One.
Okay, so if you would like to start this series, grab Daughter of No One. If you're already in the middle, Broken Rain is the latest release. Awesome. Last, we have Fiona Riley, who also has a brand new series. Very exciting. Tell us a little bit about your series and your reading, and start whenever you like.
So I'm reading from Bet Against Me, which is part of, it's called the High Stakes Romance series. It's a series that's going to take place in Boston, mostly, and it's a luxury real estate office where all of the main characters are coworkers. This particular book is the start of the series, and it features Trina Lee, who has had the best year of her life in sales, and she's like a shoo-in to win Realtor of the Year. And you know, she's going into this award ceremony so excited she's going to kill it. And at the award ceremony, a rival realtor who's also nominated ends up winning, and she feels completely blindsided. And the two women have been in competition for a while, but sort of at the other end of the spectrum, not really knowing each other, but just kind of, you know, working alongside but away from each other. And this night they have a pretty contentious argument because Trina's furious that she lost. Because they are rival realtors, the two owners of their company have been, you know, sort of rivals for a long time, and they make a bet to prove who really is the Realtor of the Year. Was it the one who worked the hardest, or the one who came with a legacy behind her name, which is Kendall Yates? She comes from a family in Connecticut that's got a massive real estate empire, and Trina is convinced she won through nepotism, not through hard work. So this follows the course of these two women in this massive bet. And the scene I'm going to read today is Trina is at a country club where she frequents regularly to find clients to purchase homes, and to sell and to buy. And Kendall shows up at the country club in hopes of getting her foot in the door, but she's never been there before. So Kendall's getting a tour of the locker room. She's left alone to her own devices, and she stumbles upon Trina coming back from a golf game. Kendall leaned against the wall behind her, watching for a moment before she finally spoke. "I didn't know you were a member here." Trina jumped. She spun on the spot, her hand on her chest. The startled look on her face faded, and the familiar taunting smile appeared as she replied, "I didn't know you were a stalker." "I'm not," Kendall pretended to examine her manicure. "I'm here on business." "So am I." Trina crossed her arms over her chest, and Kendall noticed the swell of her breasts under the tight fabric of her shirt. "Then you're not a member?" "Because it sure seemed that way." Kendall nodded in the direction Bertie disappeared. "Seems like you're a regular golf partner here." Trina uncrossed her arms and took a seemingly casual step towards her. "Not a member, just using a guest pass. The weather was too good to pass up swinging the clubs today." Kendall gave her a once-over. "A golfer, huh? That seems like too slow and easy for an activity for you. I never pegged you as a golfer." "I play for leisure and business, not exercise. And you've never pegged me. But I'm glad to know you think about it," Trina replied, and Kendall felt herself blush. "That's not what I meant. Kendall sputtered. Trina looked like she was enjoying herself. Kendall tried to step back, but Trina stepped into her space, but the wall behind her made her stop short. The smirk on Trina's face indicated that she noticed. "And since we're on the topic, I'm not sure why you're under the false impression that I would be the one being pegged and not doing the pegging." Trina's face was inches from hers, and Kendall squirmed on the spot, not from the closeness. Well, maybe the closeness was a factor because Trina looked delectable in that golfing outfit. But what Trina was saying made Kendall, well, hot. "You just keep underestimating me, and maybe you shouldn't." At this close range, Kendall could smell the faint scent of sunblock on Trina's face and something sweet like perfume and just the hint of sweat. It was pleasant. It reminded her of summer. She licked her lips, and Trina smiled. "As much fun as this is," Trina stepped back and Kendall started to exhale. "I have to shower before my client meeting, so if you'll excuse me, I'll be getting naked at the locker in this moment and rinsing off around the corner." Kendall's attempt at a controlled exhale failed, and she coughed. Trina's statement almost sounded like an invitation. "Good luck with that." Kendall was amazed she'd managed to choke out a reply at all. Trina didn't hesitate in her response. "I don't need luck. I'm pretty adept at getting wet and lathering myself, but thank you for the well wishes." Kendall had to laugh. She'd practically fallen into that one. "With your meeting. Good luck with your meeting," I should have clarified. "Thanks," Trina said as she pulled her shirt up and off, exposing a matching light pink sports bra. Kendall did her best not to stare at the lithe body before her, but it was a fruitless battle. Trina was as attractive nearly naked as she was fully dressed. Kendall averted her eyes when Trina continued to strip in front of her, something that she had a feeling was slower and more intentional than it would have been had Kendall not been there. Kendall's suit jacket pocket vibrated, and she jumped at the sensation. She placed her hand on the outside of the pocket to still her phone, but her jolting motion must have drawn Trina's attention. "No phones in here, Kendall. Club policy," Trina said, and Kendall hazarded a glance in her direction. Trina was wrapped in a soft, luxurious-looking towel with the country club's logo on it. She closed her locker and stepped back into Kendall's space. Kendall was frozen on the spot, though the desire to reach out and trace her fingers along Trina's naked shoulder was almost unignorable. Who's calling this time, I wonder? Trina asked as she looked up at her with a mischievous expression. Kendall felt herself shudder when Trina reached into her pocket and withdrew her phone. Kendall glanced down at the phone screen but allowed herself the opportunity to appreciate Trina's cleavage. Being taller than Trina certainly had its benefits. Oh, it's your friend Margot, Trina said with a smile. She held the phone out for Kendall to take. Oh, you're not just going to answer it yourself? Kendall said, joking. She could feel the heat emanating off Trina's body against her own, and though she probably should have left a long time ago, she didn't feel the need to move from this spot or this proximity. Trina raised an eyebrow in her direction before sliding her thumb against the glass face of Kendall's phone and answering the call. She brought the phone to her ear, but she kept those gorgeous brown eyes locked on Kendall's. Kendall let herself get lost in them while Trina talked. Hey, Margot, it's Trina. Trina spoke softly into the phone, and Kendall could have sworn she'd stepped even closer. Kendall was only barely aware of what Trina was saying because she was captivated by the pink gloss on Trina's lips, and the way those lips moved and formed words. What the words were, Kendall didn't actually care. I'll tell her. Thanks, Margot. You have a great day. Trina disconnected the call and slipped the phone back into Kendall's pocket. She pressed her palm against the fabric, and Kendall reflexively grabbed her wrist. What did she have to say? Kendall asked as she stroked her thumb along the inside of Trina's wrist. Trina didn't pull back from her touch. Instead, to Kendall's libido's delight, she reached out with her other hand and pulled at the bottom hem of her suit jacket, lightly grazing the front of her thigh in the process. She said to have you call her later when you weren't busy, Trina replied, not breaking eye contact. Am I busy? Kendall pulled Trina by the wrist, bringing their chests together. Do you want to be? Trina asked as she licked her lips, and Kendall needed to taste them. Yes, Kendall answered honestly. She wanted to be busy with her lips on Trina's mouth and her fingers on her body, exploring and pleasuring her. She wanted to taste the smell of summer on her skin, and she wanted that tongue against hers. Trina moaned in response and pressed her hand against Kendall's thigh. Kendall tightened her grip on Trina's wrist, pulling her arm around her waist. She lowered her head until their lips were only millimeters apart. As she leaned in to close the distance, the sound of a small group of gabbing ladies entering the locker room nearby caused her to pull back. In a flash, Trina's hands were off her body, and the space between them felt cavernous. You get the book to find the rest.
Well, I don't know if Kendall's about to get busy, but I think there are some lesfic fans who might be getting busy tonight.
Ooh.
Goodness, we left you till last, Fiona Riley. Alrighty. Wow. All right. Gonna take a breath, take a cold shower after that one. So we have progressed from food to hangovers to tension to pegging? What? Oh, gotta love Bold Strokes books. Okay. If you have questions for our authors, you can put them in the Q&A panel. We do only have just about 10 minutes, so we might not get to all of them. So I have one to start us off. Very simple one. What inspired you to write this book? And if the two authors who write series want to talk about what inspired their series, that's fine too. So let's start with Fiona, since everyone else is muted. You guys
So my first book was Mismatch, and that was the start of the Perfect Match series. It was never written to be a series. It became one after in the writing process. And I've written a few standalones since then, but I have to admit, I really miss the series life. I miss the world building. I miss the family and friend connections. And I was really excited to kind of jump back into this. I had this idea for this book about 1.5 years ago, and it snowballed quickly into 3 books, and it just seemed like they had to go together. So I've just been really excited to get back into the series saddle.
That's cool. I know a lot of fans love series, so not the only one. How about you, Anne? What inspired you to write Money Creek?
You know, my memory is a little fuzzy on what got me started with Money Creek, though I love the idea of kind of big stakes, protagonist sabotaging themselves and, you know, putting themselves in peril and then getting themselves out of it. And that's the journey that Claire takes. And I try to stress her as much as possible. That was my goal as an author, so that the comeback is really rewarding.
Well, that's great. Cool. How about you, Sam? What inspired your series?
Well, I love all things fantasy. Kind of like Fiona mentioned, I love the world building. And the character of Justin is the character who actually came to me first. She just kind of popped into my head, and as did the villain of the series. And so I just kind of kept going from there. And I enjoyed reading about Fae, and there's a lot of Fae and magic, and I pulled a lot from Irish mythology for this series, so there's a lot of that incorporated as well, and I love reading that stuff, so I decided to write it.
Cool, that sounds like a lot of research.
It is. The research is my favorite part.
Oh, well, that's good. How about you, CJ? What inspired Just One Taste?
So I hadn't written about my hometown before, and I wanted to sort of do a story that was sort of true to my hometown, and that's sort of what created this idea of a diner and all the problems that happen with that. Most of the places in the book are real places. The park, the skating rink underneath the highway, all that stuff's real. So I just wanted to sort of go home and have a good time doing it. So
cool. A diner is such a great setting for a book too, because there are so many elements of drama and comedy.
And loss, yeah.
How about you, Ronnie? What inspired your book, Passion, Sweet Surrender?
Well, you know, I went to Mexico a lot as a kid, and we got to stay at this really amazing place. It was right on the beach. It was a private beach. And I just started having some childhood memories, and I thought, you know, that's a great setting. A private beach where there's like not a lot of technology. You know, it's like living back in the 1990s, way back when. I feel so old saying that. So anyway, I thought, what would it be like to have two women living on this private beach and their neighbors? And then I thought, well, what would really make that interesting? Well, it'd be really interesting if they didn't like each other, but they had a strong physical attraction. So they're gonna fight that the whole time. So that's what inspired me to write that one. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I did it.
That's great. I love the enemies to lovers trope. That's very popular and great source of tension.
Right.
All right, well, speaking of tropes, tell us what's a trope that you want to write, or a storyline that interests you to write? Do you have something in mind, a book or a concept, a premise that you would love to write? And we can have our audience in the chat roll give their yays or nays to your story ideas, maybe? All right, I'm gonna look who's looking brave. Anne, you go first.
I'm not sure I understand the question that you're asking. Is there a trope that we're particularly attracted to and want to explore in a novel that we write? Well, I'm not sure about tropes, to tell you the truth. I actually don't think of a trope when I'm writing a novel. So, but you know, there's in all of my books there is enough romance that it follows that conventional trope of the attraction, the tension between them, and then the coming together. In Money Creek, I have my pill-addicted protagonist fall in love with the cop in town who's on the drug task force. So there's, you know, an immediate disparate interest there that they have to resolve. So I guess the romance trope is always a part of my work.
Oh, that's a great answer. And there are tons of mystery tropes too.
Yeah.
You know, small towns and detectives and whatnot.
This is a small town book.
Oh, plenty to work with.
Yeah.
How about you, Sam? Do you have a particular trope or a story idea that you're interested in writing next?
You know, I'm kind of with Anne. I'm not sure if there's one specifically that I'm necessarily drawn to, or that I'm, you know, thinking about writing. I guess, I mean, with this series, there's sort of the class disparity and the coming from opposite worlds between Aurelia and Justin. And I find I really enjoy writing that, and the dynamics and the, you know, sort of the situations that can come out of people who have had vastly different life experiences. And so that's something I like and may continue exploring as, you know, this series wraps up and I delve into whatever comes next. So
yeah, I think that's a great a great trope for fantasy too, because it often uses a fantasy context to parallel truths in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great one. CJ Birch, do you have a story idea or a trope that you want to tackle next?
I think the trope that I'll be tackling next is stranger coming into a different world. I'm working on a sci-fi where someone travels back in time to kind of change the past to make the future better. So they're living in a world that they've never experienced before. They live underground, so they've never seen the sky. So it's this stranger idea. Because I find I tend to write people falling in love with their bosses. I now have 2 storylines like that, so I'm trying to get away from that trope.
That's so popular though. So, okay, I have a question for you. Can they travel to 2020 and change things? Because if so, you and I need to talk.
It gets worse. In my book, it gets so much worse. So, and I had originally started this book before the pandemic, and I actually had to rewrite the whole idea because I was like, I can't write this as a pandemic. It just won't work because it came true. So,
right.
Maybe stop writing it then.
Oh dear. How about you, Fiona? Do you have a trope or an idea you want to write next?
So I'm trying something a little different with the 3rd book in the series. I'm going to do an age gap. It's a financial disparity, but it's an age gap, and it's a toaster oven romance. So it's going to be a first timer with an older woman. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's not something I've done before. And this book is desperately trying to force itself ahead of book 2. So I will do my best not to shove it out first, but I'm excited about that.
All right. Well, that's going to be interesting. How about you, Ronnie? What are you thinking about writing next? Any tropes that appeal?
Well, you know, I'm really drawn to the enemies to lovers, as you say. I love building the tension, and I think when you have a lot of tension between characters, and you have characters that are completely different from each other, it leaves a lot of room for character growth. And so I really like that. And basically, I just like building that chemistry. That's what I'm drawn to.
All right, awesome. I see that we have some people in the chat room telling us what they want to see more of. So if you are listening in and you want to let us know what you want to see more of, what you want to read more of in our books, we have our authors listening. All right, we have 2 minutes left, so we are going to do a speed round as quick as you can. Tell us what's one thing you learned about yourself or you learned through your research when writing your book.
Oh, okay. I think one thing I learned in writing this book is that it's always possible to grow and to learn to accept someone else for what they are, even though they're completely different from you.
That's a great answer. Anne?
I think I learned that compassion for people's faults is something that should always be at the forefront, that, you know, we all make mistakes, and it's how you pick yourself up from them that makes the difference, and that helps me as well.
Wow, there's some deep insights and learning from this. I love it. Sam?
Mine's not as deep. I learned that the characters will continuously surprise me, and writing fight scenes is difficult.
I'm sure it is. All right, Fiona.
I found that I have way too much fun writing snarky interactions, and I was warned by a good friend of mine, Chris Bryant, that I was maybe a little too mean between the two of them in the beginning. So I definitely toned that down a little bit, but I didn't expect myself to be really into the bitchiness, but I absolutely dove right in. Like, I was 100% in there. Solid shade all day long.
Alrighty, some snarky bitchiness in O'Reilly's new series. All right, CJ, it's time to think.
Yeah, this is my first contemporary romance, so I learned that I can actually put out a contemporary romance with no fight scenes. I had to actually take some out, and no sci-fi drama, basically. So, and I did it, I think.
Cool. Are you going to write another romance?
Possibly. I have an idea for one, so there might be one coming down the lane. Yep.
Maybe there will be. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you to our amazing authors. You did great readings, we appreciate it. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.